I still remember the smell of dust and petrol that morning. It was one of those ordinary days, the kind you never think will matter. The sun was already high, and I was running late, complaining in my head about nothing important. I had my earphones in, my bag slung over one shoulder, and my mind was miles away from danger. That's the cruel thing about life. It never warns you when everything is about to change. I didn't notice the car at first. I only felt the rough fast. Confident. 1 second I was walking. The next, the world tilted. My earphones fell. My phone hit the ground. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound didn't come out the way I expected. It came out broken, weak, like my body had already decided it was pointless. Someone whispered my name. I didn't know how they knew it. A cloth covered my face. The smell was sharp chemicals, sweat, something old. My legs kicked, but the ground disappeared beneath me. Arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me like I weighed nothing at all. The door slammed, and just like that, the noise of the world vanished. Inside the car, everything felt too small. My heart was slamming so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. I tried to move, but a hand pressed firmly against my thigh, warning me not to try again. "Don't," a man said quietly. Not shouting. Not angry, calm. That terrified me more than if he had screamed. I remember thinking, this isn't real. People like me don't get kidnapped. This happens to other people. On the news. The car drove for a long time. Or maybe it only felt that way. Time stopped making sense almost immediately. Every turn felt like another door closing behind me. When the car finally stopped, my legs were numb. I was dragged out, my shoes scraping against concrete. A door opened. Another slammed shut. Then silence. They removed the cloth. I blinked hard, my eyes burning as the light flooded in. The room was bare cement walls, a small window to hide a reach, a mattress on the floor that looked like it had been there for years. That was when I realized something worse than fear. I was alone. The door closed behind him with a soft click, like he wasn't worried about me running anywhere. I screamed then. I screamed until my throat hurt, until my chest burned, until I slid down the wall and wrapped my arms round my knees like a child. No one came. No one answered. The walls didn't care. Hours passed. For days. I don't know. Eventually, the door opened again. He brought food, water. He didn't look at me the way I expected. No rage, no hunger. Just ownership, like I was furniture he had bought and placed in a room. "This is how it has to be," he said. I didn't answer. I refused to speak to him for days after that. I don't know if that was brave or stupid. All I knew was that my voice was the only thing I still owned, and I wasn't ready to give it to him. But silence doesn't protect you forever. There are things I won't describe. Not because they didn't happen, but because some memories don't need words to exist. What I will say is this. Every time the door opened, I held my breath. Every night, I slept with one eye open. Every morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a nightmare. It wasn't. Days blurred into weeks. My body changed before my mind could catch up. I stopped counting time because counting made me panic. Survival became simple. Eat, sleep, breathe, endure. He spoke more as time went on, told me things about himself I didn't want to know, told me things about my life that proved he had planned this for a long time. That knowledge hollowed me out. One morning, I woke up feeling different. Not sick exactly. Just off. My stomach felt strange. My head spun when I stood. Food I used to tolerate suddenly made me gag. I told myself it was stress, trauma. Anything but the thought that crept in quietly and refused to leave. No, not that. I pushed it away for weeks. Until the day I realized my body was keeping a secret I couldn't ignore anymore. I was late. Very late. The room felt smaller than ever as the truth settled in. My hands shook. My mind raced ahead to places I couldn't bear to look. I sat on the mattress and pressed my palms against my stomach, not feeling anything, just fear. Raw and consuming. I wasn't just a captive anymore. I was carrying something that tied me to him in a way I never asked for. And I hadn't even told him yet. The hardest part wasn't the fear. It was the waiting. Every morning, I woke up with the same thought pressing against my chest like a weight. Today he'll know. Every night, I lay awake listening for footsteps, wondering if my body would betray me before I was ready. I didn't have a calendar, but my body kept its own count. The dizziness came first. Then the exhaustion that sank into my bones no matter how much I slept. Some days, I could barely sit up without feeling like the room was spinning. I stopped eating most of the food he brought. At first, he didn't notice. Then he did. "You're losing weight," he said one evening, setting the tray down a little harder than usual. "You need to eat." I stared at the floor. I had learned that looking at him for too long made my skin crawl, like my body was trying to pull away from itself. "I'm not hungry," I whispered. He crouched in front of me, forcing my chin up with 2 fingers. His touch made my stomach twist. "You don't get to decide that anymore," I swallowed and nodded because nodding was safer than speaking. That night, I cried silently into the mattress, my hands clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. I wasn't crying for myself alone anymore. I was crying for something inside me that had no say in any of this. I didn't even know how to feel about it. Some moments, the thought filled me with panic so sharp it stole my breath. Other moments quiet, dangerous moments I felt something else. Something soft and confusing that made me hate myself for even considering it. I told myself not to think about it. But your body doesn't care what your mind wants. The morning sickness came without warning. I barely made it to the corner of the room before I threw up. My whole body shook afterward, sweat soaking my clothes as I sat there, shaking, staring at nothing. That's when I knew. Denial wasn't an option anymore. When he opened the door later that day, he stopped short. His eyes went straight to the corner, to the evidence I hadn't had time to clean, to my pale face, my trembling hands. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. He watched me for a long moment, his head tilting slightly, like he was solving a puzzle. Then his expression changed. Not anger. Understanding. The room felt like it was closing in as he straightened slowly. "How long?" he asked. I shook my head. Tears blurred my vision. My mouth opened and closed. Useless. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his face with one hand. "You're pregnant," he said. Not a question. Hearing the word out loud felt like being hit in the chest. It made everything real in a way my thoughts hadn't. I collapsed onto the mattress, sobbing, my body folding in on itself like it was trying to disappear. He didn't touch me then. That scared me more than if he had. He paced the room instead, hands on his hips, muttering under his breath. I caught fragments of words: plans, future, responsibility. None of them included me as a person. I was a container. A situation to be managed. Finally, he stopped in front of me. "You should have told me," he said. I laughed. A broken, hysterical sound tore out of my throat before I could stop it. "Told you," I gasped. "Told you what you did to me." His face hardened. "Be careful," he warned quietly. I pressed my hand against my mouth, my entire body shaking. I had crossed a line. I knew it instantly. But something inside me had snapped, and I couldn't pull the words back. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then he turned away. "We'll deal with it," he said. "You'll be fine." He left the room. I screamed after he closed the door, not words, just sound. Raw and animal and full of everything I had been holding in. My throat burned, but I didn't stop until my voice gave out. After that, everything changed. He brought better food. More water. Vitamins I didn't recognize. He spoke to me differently, not kinder, exactly, but more careful. Like I had become fragile property. That didn't make me feel safer. It made me feel trapped in a new way. My body changed slowly. Then, all at once, my clothes grew tighter. My chest ached. My stomach began to round just enough that I couldn't pretend anymore, even to myself. I avoided looking down. Some days, I felt numb. Other days, grief washed over me so suddenly I had to curl up on the floor to keep from drowning in it. I'd talk to the walls when the silence got too loud. I'd talk to my mother in my head. To my younger self. Sometimes to the baby. Those moments scared me the most. Because when I talked to it, I felt something stir inside me that wasn't fear. I hated that. How can you feel anything but horror? I whispered one night, staring at the ceiling. How dare you feel anything else? But feelings don't ask permission. One afternoon, while he was gone longer than usual, I stood on the mattress and stretched as far as I could toward the small window. My fingers brushed the edge. Just barely. I froze, my heart pounding. Hope is dangerous when you're captive. It hurts worse than despair. Still, once you taste it, you can't forget. I tried again the next day. And the next. Each time, I reached a little farther. My arms burned. My legs shook. But one day finally my fingers wrapped round the metal frame. I didn't see much. A strip of sky. The edge of a roof. The sound of distant traffic. But it was proof. The world still existed. That night, when he came in, I looked at him differently. Not with fear. With calculation. I started listening more closely after that. Memorizing his routines. Counting the hours he was gone. Noting the days when he drank, when he was distracted, when he was careless. The pregnancy slowed me down, but it also sharpened me. I wasn't surviving just for myself anymore. I don't know when the thought became a plan. I only know that one morning, as I pressed my hand against my growing stomach, I made a promise. This won't be your whole story, I whispered. I won't let it be, and for the first time since the day I was taken, I believed escape was possible. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If I stayed, I would disappear completely. And I was done letting that happen. Hope is quiet at first. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or certainty. It comes as a whisper you barely trust, a thought you're afraid to finish because finishing it makes it real. What if I could leave? I carried that thought with me like contraband. I hid it deep, only taking it out when I was alone, turning it over carefully, examining every edge. Hope was dangerous, but staying had become unbearable. My body was changing faster now. My stomach curved outward in a way I couldn't deny. Some mornings, I woke up before the pain in my back or the ache in my legs and forgot for just 1 second where I was. Then reality would rush in. Cold and heavy, and I would remember everything all over again. He noticed my silence had changed. I still spoke little, but my eyes weren't empty anymore. They watched. Measured. He didn't like that. Stop looking at me like that. He snapped one evening. I lowered my gaze immediately. I knew better than to challenge him outright. Survival had taught me when to bend and when to stay. Still, but inside, I was moving. The window became my anger. Every day, I stretched just enough to remind myself it was there. I counted the sounds outside: cars, voices, footsteps. I noticed patterns. Traffic was loudest in the early morning and late afternoon. Quieter at night. He usually left after sunrise. He usually came back before dark. Usually. The word usually became my opening. The opportunity came on a day that felt wrong from the start. He didn't return when he normally did. Hours passed. My nerves buzzed with something I hadn't felt in months, anticipation mixed with terror. I paced the room slowly. My hand pressed against my belly. My heart pounded so hard I worried it would give me away. Somehow, when I heard voices outside faint, distant, I froze. Then I moved. I dragged the mattress beneath the window, every sound feeling too loud. To final, my muscles screamed as I climbed, my balance thrown off by the weight I was carrying. My fingers scraped against metal as I forced the window open wider than I ever had before. Cold air rushed in, Freedom smelled like dust and fuel and rain. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because leaving meant stepping into the unknown with nothing but my body and a future I hadn't planned for. Then I felt a flutter inside me, not strong, not dramatic, but real. That was enough. I pulled myself through the window. The drop wasn't far, but it felt endless. I landed hard, pain shooting up my legs, but I stayed upright. I didn't scream. I didn't look back. I ran. I don't remember how long I ran or where exactly I went. I remember my lungs burning, my feet aching, my vision blurring with tears I didn't stop to wipe away. People stared. Someone shouted. A woman grabbed my arm and asked if I was okay. That's when my legs finally gave out. The next few hours exist in fragments. A car, a hospital, bright lights, hands that touched me gently and asked permission first. I cried the entire time. I cried because I was free. I cried because I was terrified. I cried because the weight of everything I had survived finally crushed down on me all at once. When a nurse told me I was safe, I laughed hysterically before breaking down again. Safe felt like a word from another language. They asked questions, lots of them. Some I answered, some I couldn't. When they asked about the pregnancy, my throat closed up. I stared at the ceiling, blinking rapidly, trying to keep from unraveling completely. Yes, I whispered finally, I'm pregnant. They didn't ask how, not right away, and for that, I was grateful. Later, much later, when I was wrapped in a blanket that smelled like detergent and something clean, a social worker sat beside me. You don't have to decide anything right now, she said softly, about the baby, about anything. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. Because even if I didn't have to decide yet, the decision was already living inside me. The days that followed were heavy. Freedom wasn't the instant relief I had imagined. It was complicated, loud, overwhelming. Every door slam made me jump. Every unfamiliar voice sent my heart racing. At night, I dreamed of the room, of the door closing, of waking up and realizing none of it was real. I woke up screaming more than once. And then there was the pregnancy. Doctors spoke in calm, measured tones. They showed me images I wasn't ready to see. They explained options carefully, respectfully, as if afraid I might shatter if they spoke too loudly. I appreciated that. What I didn't appreciate was the voice in my own head. Some days, I felt nothing. Complete emotional numbness, like my mind had shut the door to protect itself. Other days, I felt everything at once. Anger, grief, shame that didn't belong to me but clung anyway, and love. That word scared me the most. I didn't want to love something that came from violence. I didn't want to feel connected to him in any way, shape, or form. But the truth was unavoidable. This child wasn't him. This child was me too. I spent hours staring out of windows, holding my stomach, arguing silently with myself. If I keep it, am I weak? If I don't, am I cruel? Is there a right choice or only survival? There were no easy answers. People told me what they thought I should do. Some meant well, others didn't. I learned quickly whose voices to tune out. The only one that mattered was my own. And it was still learning how to speak again. One evening, alone in my room, I placed both hands over my belly and spoke out loud for the first time without fear. I don't know what we're going to do, I said softly, but I know one thing. I took a shaky breath. You are not my trauma. The words surprised me with their strength. In that moment, I realized something profound. My story hadn't ended when I escaped. It had just reached the part where I finally had a choice. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't knock politely or announce itself. Healing sneaks in quietly, in moments so small you barely notice them at first. A full night of sleep. A laugh that surprises you. A day where fear doesn't sit in the front seat of your mind. For a long time, I thought freedom would feel loud. It didn't. It felt fragile. In the weeks after my escape, I learned how broken I really was. Not in a way that made me ashamed, but in a way that demanded patience. Trauma doesn't leave when danger ends. It lingers in the body, in the breath, in the way your shoulders tense when someone stands too close. I attended counseling sessions. where I barely spoke at first. Some days, all I could do was sit there and breathe while someone reminded me that silence didn't mean failure. You survived, my therapist said once. Now you're learning how to exist without survival mode. That sounded impossible. My body didn't know how to relax. My mind was constantly scanning for exits, for threats, for signs that something bad was about to happen again. And then there was my pregnancy. Every appointment was layered with emotion, fear mixed with curiosity, pain mixed with something dangerously close to hope. I still struggled with guilt over that hope-like feeling. It meant I was forgiving something unforgivable. But slowly, I began to understand something important. I didn't have to justify my feelings to anyone, not my anger, not my confusion, not the moments of tenderness I felt when I rested my hand against my stomach late at night. This wasn't a story about what was done to me anymore. It was becoming a story about what I chose next. There were days I doubted myself deeply, days when the past felt louder than the present, days when I wondered if I was strong enough to be a good parent when I was still learning how to take care of myself. But strength doesn't look like certainty. Strength looks like showing up anyway. I built a routine, slowly, carefully. I learned what made me feel grounded: morning sunlight, warm showers, journaling when words got stuck in my chest. I learned how to ask for help without apologizing for needing it. That took time. I also learned how to forgive myself for freezing instead of fighting, for surviving instead of escaping sooner, for feeling love where I thought only pain should exist. None of those things were weaknesses. They were human. The day I held my child for the first time, the world didn't magically make sense. I didn't feel instantly healed. What I felt was something quieter and deeper: resolve. I looked down at that tiny face and understood something I hadn't been able to put into words before. My past did not get to decide our future. I wasn't naive about the road ahead. Healing would be ongoing. Some scars would never fully fade. Some memories would still surface when I least expected them to. But I was no longer powerless. I named my child with intention. I chose a name that meant strength, renewal, light, a reminder not of where we came from but of where we were going. Motherhood didn't erase my trauma, but it gave my survival a new shape. I learned how to exist beyond fear, how to set boundaries, how to speak my truth without shaking, how to reclaim parts of myself I thought were gone forever. And most importantly, I learned this: what happened to me was not my fault. What I became because of it, that was my choice. If you're listening to this and carrying a story you never asked for, hear me clearly. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not defined by what someone else did to you. You are still here. And sometimes that is the most powerful beginning of all.